Hey guys, welcome to a weekly question video. On this week's question video, I'm going to be answering the question of should punishments happen immediately or can they be delayed? But before I get into that, like this video if you like it, subscribe if you're not already, and leave a comment down below. All those things really do help out the channel. And if you want to help support us continuing to do what we do here, the best place to do that is over on Patreon, so a link to our Patreon is down below. So this question of should punishments happen immediately versus can they be delayed? I think that this is kind of a common question because we are in relationship dynamics where, we're trying to figure out what's the best approach. We're trying to figure out what works best within our own relationships. And so to a certain extent, this is something that you are going to have to work through and see what works for you. However, as a rule of thumb, I would say that it is best to take care of punishments as soon as it is feasibly possible. Sometimes that means that you have to delay till the end of the day. Sometimes it means you have to delay to the next day, but I really would not suggest making it a habit to delay punishments beyond the same day. Now, we are adults. We understand our behavior, the implications of our behavior, what we did wrong. And so we don't need that in the moment punishment or correction immediately all of the time. So if you do not have the ability to correct or punish because of privacy, because you're not at home, because you have people or family in your home that you don't want to overhear that process, it is okay to delay to the end of the day. It is okay to wait until you get home. It is okay to wait until you have the proper privacy in order to fulfill that accountability. But you really don't want to wait too long, and there's a few reasons for this. As a taken in hand, I have a nervous anticipation. I know that I messed up, that I did wrong, and that nervousness can turn into full-blown anxiety if I have to wait days upon days in order to receive my punishments. That's not necessarily an effective mental process for your taken in hand. It's not something that adds to the process that creates more of a deterrent. It's just kind of breaking down the emotional connection between you and your taken in hand. It's something that if you put her through that process, it degrades the trust that she has in you in order to lead effectively, because leading effectively means protecting her mental process, protecting her feelings, and holding accountability as it is earned. And the best way to do that is to be prompt in your delivery. Again, as soon as feasibly possible. If that is immediately within the moment because you happen to have the privacy, you happen to have the ability, then yes, that's great. Most of the time we are having to delay at least to the end of the day or later that day. And that's okay, but you don't want to make a habit of delaying days upon days because again, that just degrades her ability to trust you, to hold accountability, to protect her mental process, and it creates a lot of anxiety in the anticipation of the punishment. It also degrades the connection and the communication, because when an infraction happens, when poor behavior happens, when something is said that is disrespectful or something is done that is disobedient, it creates division in our relationships, and to allow that division to continue to exist beyond what is absolutely necessary is not going to drive growth in your relationship, and it's not going to help you get to your goals. And so by delaying, you are allowing that division to continue to exist in your relationship, because when you are in domestic discipline, one of the only ways to really create that connection again, to move beyond these mistakes, is to hold accountability, is to fulfill that punishment and have that reconciliation after, where you can both feel resolved that the situation has been dealt with appropriately and you can move on. So when you delay the process of dealing with what happened so that you can then have that reconciliation, you are just degrading the connection within your relationship, and that is not going to get you closer to your goals. The next reason why you really don't want to delay punishments as any more than what is necessary is that it degrades your authority as a head of household. When we were kind of going through this process where we were trying to figure out what was going to work for us, there was a point in time where we would delay punishments to be convenient to our schedules. We thought that that was a good idea. We thought that it was worth a try, and it was worth a try. It did not work, but it was worth trying out. And when we did that, it really did degrade Coda's authority over me, because it felt like in the moment that I was getting away with what I was doing. There wasn't a sense of urgency to change my behavior because the consequences were delayed. And so by delaying the consequences, you are kind of creating this sense of that following the rules aren't that big of a deal, that it doesn't really matter that much. There's not a sense of urgency to actually follow the rules. There's not a sense of urgency to change behavior, because there's this concept of, well, I might have the consequences, but that's later down the road. That's future me's problem. It's kind of the same concept of using a credit card, right? Where you can get what you want in the moment, and then, yeah, maybe later down the road you're going to have to pay for it, but you don't think about that in the moment. And that's kind of the same concept of delaying your punishments, is that, yes, eventually consequences will happen, but when you delay those punishments, it doesn't create that sense of connection to, I really don't want to have to deal with that right now. I don't want to have to go through those consequences, so I'm going to change this right now so I don't have to worry about it. Because when they're delayed, it's kind of that concept of, I'll deal with it later. Also, as a head of household, you don't want to have that attitude either. You don't want to have this kind of attitude of like, I can't believe she's not following the rules again, I'll deal with it later. Because that does not communicate strong authority. That doesn't communicate leadership. That doesn't communicate control of the relationship. And all of those things you have to have. You have to have authority. You have to have control. You have to lead your relationship in order to be an effective head of household. Because if you are not demanding that authority and demanding that she follow your leadership, then you're not going to see growth in your relationship. So you really do want to have a sense of authority to step in and hold accountability right away. Now, there are times where delays are going to happen. Life is not always perfect. It's not always predictable. Sometimes there are illness that you have to take into consideration. Sometimes there are medical procedures that you have to take into consideration. Sometimes there's vacations or travel that you have to take into consideration. There's a myriad of things that could happen that might make delays inevitable. And so don't hear me say, like, if you have to delay a few days, that it's going to be completely detrimental to your relationship. One off here and there because of these extenuating circumstances is not going to be terrible for your relationship. It's when you make it a habit, when you habitually start to delay punishments because you don't want to deal with it, or because it's inconvenient, or that you're just not prioritizing that part of your relationship. That is when it starts to be detrimental to your relationship, because as a head of household, you do get to decide when things happen. And if you are delaying for no other reason than it's just not convenient and I don't want to deal with it, then that's going to be communicated to your taken in hand. And eventually that is going to result in either her feeling defeated because she doesn't feel like you are as invested in this process as she is, or it's going to kind of create an attitude within her that, well, if you don't care, then I'm not going to care. And both of those things are super detrimental to the edification of your relationship. And so you really do want to get to a point where you are communicating through your actions that you are committed to this process, that you are committed to this relationship, and that you are committed to holding accountability when it is necessary. And if you do have to delay, then it's a really good idea to communicate why. You absolutely don't have to, and if you feel like it would be detrimental to your relationship to have that type of communication, then that's a decision that you're going to have to make in those moments. You're going to have to kind of use your best judgment to know what kind of communication is appropriate and when. But I know that for Coda and I, if he tells me why he is making the decision that he's making, I'm not allowed to question it. I'm not allowed to tell him, I'm not allowed to try to point out where he could change his thinking or change his decision. I still have to accept his decision, but if he gives me the explanation behind his thought process, especially when it comes to something like delaying punishment, it allows me to have a better understanding. Again, I'm not allowed to offer any type of feedback to his thought process, to his decision making, but it just gives me the ability to kind of understand and have better understanding so that I can do what I'm supposed to do and have a good attitude about it. So all that to say, I hope that kind of answered the question. I definitely think that you should err on the side of dealing with consequences, delving out punishments as soon as possible, within a realistic time frame. Definitely, we do not abdicate public punishments. We do not abdicate trying to punish your taken in hand in public settings. There are maybe some ways that you could do that very discreetly, but it's just something that we use spanking as our primary punishment, really as our only punishment, and there's no discreet way to give a spanking in a public setting. And so for that reason, we always advocate for waiting until you have the proper privacy in order to fulfill those consequences. And that might mean delaying till the end of the day, but we really just don't advocate delaying on a regular basis beyond the end of the day or the next day at most. So, all right, guys, thank you for joining me. Let me know what you think down below, and we will talk to you next time.